Okay, it says we are live. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
All right. So we're going to be starting off our volunteer panel called Volunteer Responsibly, and we're going to talk about how to do that. Today we have Sucheta Rawal from Go Eat Give. We also have Justine Abigail Yu from Operation Groundswell. We have Amy McLaughlin from Ayana Journeys. And we have Georgina Wilson Powell from Pebble Magazine. So let's see, let's get started. Hang on, we're still waiting for things to load up with our new technology.
Says it's streaming, but I don't get anything.
Okay, well, I guess let's get started. And if we need to backtrack a little bit, we'll do that. All right, so ladies, my first question is, could each of you tell us a little bit about your first volunteer travel experience? What was it like, and what all did you learn from it?
Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Sucheta, and I'm the founder of Go Eat Give, a nonprofit organization. And the way I actually founded the organization is because I was going on volunteer trips myself. And my first trip was to Russia about 8 years ago. And I was working full-time in a corporate job, but I wanted to have a more culturally immersive travel experience where I also give back in the community. And there were very few opportunities I found for professionals who can only take off for a week to 2 weeks and travel across the world and do something meaningful. I saw a lot of programs out there for gap years and college students, and a lot of volunteer work requires long-term stay, but I couldn't do that. So I went to Russia through another organization where it was 4 hours outside of Moscow in Yaroslav, and we worked with some of the local orphanage boarding schools, women's outpatient mental health care facility, and an elderly daycare facility. And it was a wonderful experience for me because, first of all, I probably wouldn't have gone to Yaroslav by myself because nobody speaks English. It's not a tourist town. So it was a way for me to experience Russia outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg, where people normally go to, and live in this place. We were in an apartment and have a local lady come in and cook 3 meals a day. So before that, for me, Russian food was meat and potatoes. I really didn't know much about it. But when we had this home chef come cook all meals for us, and we also had one of the volunteers was vegetarian, and she was cooking really wonderful Russian vegetarian food for her. It opened my eyes to what people actually eat at home can be sometimes very different from what we perceive it to be. So all in all, for me, it was, of course, the food is highlight for me when I travel. It is part of Go Eat Give experience. But I was able to talk to the locals through these volunteer opportunities I did. Otherwise, I probably won't have been able to because of the language barrier. And then, how do you actually go and start a conversation with a total stranger if you're just traveling by yourself?
Cool. Shall I go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you.
Mine's quite different in that I've been traveling. I've been traveling since I was 18, and the first place I pretty much went was Australia for a year, which is pretty much as far away from London as you can go. But despite doing lots of stuff, working on farms and things, I'd never actually done any proper sort of volunteering until the last couple of years, when I've done a lot of like coral replanting and working with like oyster regeneration projects, which I'm really, really interested in sort of marine biology. And sort of trying to work with different projects that help sort of sea life. but it's something that I've looked back on and kind of gone, I wish I'd started doing it earlier. And I think, 15 years ago, you just didn't know enough companies that were out there doing these kind of things. And volunteering, I think, felt very differently. It was, you'd have to sort of give up all home comforts and things. So I think volunteering's changed a lot. And, even if, like me, you didn't do it when you're really young, I think it's great to hear that, there's so many opportunities now where you can do it later on, and you can do it for just a week or 2 weeks instead of having to do it for a month. So I think even though I didn't do it early on, the things that you learn just stay with you forever.
Wow, absolutely. Wonderful. Amy?
Hi, good morning. My first volunteer travel experience was about 6 years ago. I left my job in sustainable tourism in the UK, and I took on it was more like a pro bono consultancy project in rural India, working with a community-based tourism initiative. And I wanted to volunteer my time to something that I felt there was a skill match, and I had some experience in that field. And I stayed with a local community for around a month, helping them build their capacity in international communications and some policies and things like this. It was an amazing experience to live with a local family in a fairly non-touristic destination for a while. It's certainly a very memorable experience, but for me, I really solidified my understanding that not a great deal can be achieved in such a short amount of time, even if you have the right professional skills that the organization are looking for. And so, in fact, I went on to support the organization remotely for several years, because it really takes a long time for you to understand another culture. And I still don't understand rural Indian culture, and I never will. But you build those relationships and start to understand the needs of the community a lot longer over if you have more time to invest. So that was my key takeaway of the experience.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Justine.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Justine. Nice to meet everyone here. I hope you can hear me all right. I kind of came from a different route as well. I had studied, my background's in international development, and so I had learned a lot of things about volunteer travel and development work before I had even set out to do this kind of thing. So I was already a little bit wary about a lot of the things that I'm sure we'll be talking about today at this session. And so knowing that I didn't want to go abroad with a particular volunteer organization, I kind of set about it on my own, where I went to the Philippines for a few months, and I was looking for a nonprofit or some sort of development organization that really resonated with my values and also with my background. At the time, I was working for another nonprofit who they were in media and press freedom, and so I was looking for a press freedom advocacy group in the Philippines, and asked them if they needed any help on the administrative side, which is I've been working marketing communications, and so I knew that's where my skill set was, and I wanted to be able to contribute in that way. And so I went to the Philippines for a few months, and I volunteered through that. So a little bit of a different route.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you all for sharing those wonderful stories. So let's start moving into some of the nitty-gritty details of volunteer travel. I'm interested to hear from each of you about what you think the key elements are that a volunteer responsible trip should have. Sucheta, do you want to start or?
Sure. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different opinion from a lot of other people, because I know some people do say a responsible volunteer trip should be impactful, it should be long-term. In my line of what I've been doing, it has to have a people-to-people element. where you are actually working on the ground with the locals. And I always seek out organizations to partner with that already exist and are working in the community, rather than going in there and say, hey, we are here from the US and we're going to build a house for you because that's what you need. Rather, I would go in the community and look for a project that, say, some local has already started a nonprofit, they have a staff, they have a budget, and I'll come in and say, how can we help you in the cause that you already have established here? Whether it's by bringing in financial resources or human help or skills or donations of items, or just simply awareness of the project that you have in your own community or in a global scale. So for me, I always look for how much of the local people are involved in the project. If it's something that you're going with an organization that walks in a place and says, hey, we are here to do a project and then we're going to get out and never come back to this place, then that may raise a red flag for me.
Yeah, and I'll just jump on that as well. The importance of having partnerships with local communities, and in a way where, you know, if you are looking for a volunteer travel organization, asking questions about, you know, what that partnership looks like and seeing what kinds of projects you're working on. You know, is it a community requested project? Is it something that this community actually wants or needs? Is a really, really important aspect of volunteer travel. And sometimes we'll find even that our help, quote unquote help, is not actually needed in these communities. And so just speaking from my organization, you know, we wouldn't go and help if it's not needed, right? Like, we would take the time to meet with these local partners, to learn about the work that they're doing, the opportunities and the challenges that they face, and learning from them exactly what they're working on. So that's the thing, is that with volunteer travel, sometimes there's no actual volunteering needed, which is something that a lot of participants and people who are going abroad don't necessarily like to hear, because it's not sexy, or, you know, but it's a really important thing to listen to our community partners if we actually want to make a difference. That's where it starts.
I think that's a really good point, and we've written a lot about volunteering in Pebble magazine. We do a lot on eco travel, a lot on volunteering, and a point someone else made to me a while ago, and it's really stayed with me, is that not only should it have clear goals, whatever you want to be involved in, it should have an end date, because an end date shows that it's for a particular project, it's to actually finish a goal, and then there'll be a move on, and then they'll work on something else. And I think that's an easy way to see if a project is kosher, is does what it says it does, because like Justine was saying, I think there's a really big problem in that there are so many different volunteering outlets out there. You've really got to make sure that what you're doing is for real. And like you say, everyone wants to volunteer, but is that the best thing you can actually do? You don't want to take resources and work away from people that are already there. And you want to, like you were both saying, you want to work with projects that do more, that are actually wanted by the community. And I think to make sure it has a specific goal and a specific end date is something that, is quite a good way just to go, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know this is for this, rather than just turning up to, like you say, build a wall or build a school or something. And I think building on that, you should try and find a placement that really matches your skills. Like you were saying, Justine was saying that she wanted to find someone that matches her press freedom skills. If you've got skills like that, then try and match your placement to it, rather than just turning up and being a pair of hands.
And if I can just add to that. So this morning I'm representing Ayana Journeys, which is an educational travel company here in Cambodia, and also our partner organization, which is Peppy Tours. And they've been running for a lot longer. We now offer all of their educational travel in Cambodia. And our philosophy is very much, you have to learn before you can help. And so we really try to encourage travelers, even with the best intentions, to try and get rid of that idea that you will visit a country and help anyone other than spend your money wisely. But the best thing you can do is to spend time with local people and hear their story, and learn from them. And in a beautiful place like Cambodia, local communities have got so much to teach foreigners. And so we're really trying to often go against the tide of this kind of travel, and encourage travelers to spend time in Cambodia, be aware of these development issues, see the complexities of development work, and understand that it's impossible to try and fix these global issues at any level on any holiday, but it's more of a long-term change that you need to have within yourself about how you live every day, how you travel from now on, and how you give to organizations. So that's, for us, the focus is on learning.
I'm so glad to hear, Amy, that you are working with Peppy Tours. Danielle Peppy, who is the founder, I believe, of Peppy Tours, is someone who has just accumulated so much knowledge around volunteer travel, and our organization actually really looks up to their Peppy Tours' philosophy, and the idea of learning before serving is something that's really important. And so to that question, Claire, about like what should a volunteer travel organization or business or program have, it's that educational component. And with my organization, we're clumped technically under the volunteer travel industry, but we like to think of ourselves more as an educational program or organization, as opposed to like, we're not a development organization, you know, we're there to learn. And I'm just now echoing a lot of what Amy was saying, but yeah, you know, we're staying realistic of what you're able to accomplish on your holiday for a 1 week, 2 week, or 6 months, whatever it is, program. You know, being realistic about what you can accomplish and making sure that you have, you know, some sort of educational background, whether it's, you know, even just the basics of the historical or political, social context in which you're traveling to is really essential before you can start doing any kind of work or trying to solve any problems. So that educational component is really, really key with these volunteer travel opportunities. So it's almost like reshifting or reframing how we even talk about volunteer travel and talking about that educational piece first.
I think that's really interesting because everyone I've spoken to, they put the emphasis back on education as well, and they put the emphasis back on you. So almost the education that's happening isn't what you're going to go and teach someone, like an old school, I'm going to go and teach English for a month somewhere. Actually, the education is about what you're going to learn, and using these trips to develop. It might be that you want to go into a certain area in your career, using a volunteering placement to learn more about it. So if you wanted to work in microfinance in Africa, for example, going and working with a community who's being funded by these kind of programs might help your, you know, just your overall knowledge base. So I think you guys are making, you know, really, really important points, that you're right. You do have to flip the question on its head, really, and it's not about saving the world. It's about relearning what you think you know.
Wonderful, thank you. And I just love how we're all talking about and listing some of the good things that these responsible volunteer places should have. I do want to see if we can touch on a few things that they shouldn't have. So when you're looking at volunteer experiences, what are some things, what are some red flags that could pop up that you want to be aware of?
I just wanted to, for us, the most important point in Cambodia is child protection. And I think anyone joining this conversation this morning who maybe has some critique of volunteerism is probably because they have read about things such as orphanage tourism or all these kinds of issues around volunteering in schools in most of the time in Cambodia or other similar developing countries. And so for those listening who are thinking about volunteering, for me, the key thing would be looking at a company's child protection policies. And if they appear to be allowing you to engage with children or vulnerable adults or vulnerable communities in any way, and you don't have the right skills for that, and you are not asked for the correct legal and professional background checks, then as travelers, we should be aware that that's not okay, because it wouldn't be okay for us to do that at home. It wouldn't be okay to go and teach if we don't have the right professional background, or we haven't been asked to see our police checks or something like that. This is, for me, the most important thing about volunteer travel, and I believe is where it can be most disruptive and destructive, is through the engagement of children when it's unvetted. And so for those who are thinking about coming to a place like Cambodia or other Southeast Asian countries, I would really recommend looking into the Child Safe movement, which is an international campaign that has grown from Cambodia, which raises awareness about child protection and exploitation issues in tourism as one sector, and gives advice to travelers about how they can be a child-safe traveler, and also lists some kinds of businesses that they should be supporting, so businesses who take it seriously. And that may include volunteer companies as well. It doesn't have to be hug an orphan for a week. It's not good.
And really quick, Amy, that's that movement you just talked about. Can people find that at thinkchildsafe.org?
That's right, yeah. That's the website, and it's affiliated with the international organization Friends International as well. So you'll find other resources related to their whole holistic approach to child protection as well.
Okay.
I think whatever you're going to go and do, if you're not asked what skills that you have or are checked in any way, then I think that should raise a red flag. If people just want you to go and work as a pair of hands, I think then that definitely says to you that this is a company that doesn't really care about you or the money you're spending or the experience you're going to have. So I think, as following on from Amy with the checks, I think, if it doesn't feel like people are looking into what skills you're going to bring to a project, then you should question the project.
Another one for me, which is more like specific, similar to what Amy was talking about, but there's orphanage tourism, and then there's also quite a big industry around like medical volunteerism, which is hugely problematic. Having typically Western volunteers, typically younger, 18 to 20 or whatever, who are going to different parts of the world to perform medical procedures that they are just, not qualified for, which is hugely unethical and problematic. And so when you are looking for organizations and you see something that, that has something around medicine or health, urge you to look more closely into what exactly you'll be doing. And again, it goes back to what Georgina was saying in terms of your skill sets. If you are not a professionally trained doctor or nurse or, you should not be doing that. And again, it's all about looking at the power dynamics. If the roles were reversed, is there any way that we would allow, somebody from anywhere really to perform these sort of procedures on, on our populations here? And if the answer is no, really reflecting on that and thinking about the power dynamics in play and why we would allow something like that, essentially.
So I agree with all of you guys when it comes to skill set, having matched your skill set with the organization's goals. But as someone on the other side who also runs a volunteer organization, I can say that we get a lot of people who don't have any skill set. And some of the projects that we do don't require any skill set. So we work on a farm in Cuba, and you're going to be picking weeds and planting trees. And I'm not going to say, if you have no prior gardening experience, please don't come on this trip. So we try to do a lot of projects that don't require any skill set. And that ways, people are going to be there only for a few days, and they don't really have to learn something new or work only in their field. They're going in there to that country because they're interested in traveling to that destination. not necessarily because they want to do only volunteer work. And then to the point of working with kids, I work a lot with kids in different countries. I have never personally had any issues with that, but to the point that I don't mandate the projects. I work with the local school. I don't really work with orphanage unless they're like a boarding school kind of program. But I work with the Bali Children's Project very closely. And they help kids from the villages to go to school on the island. And I've never had any problems with that, but I know that they have a full staff, a full team who is ensuring the child's safety. And they are the ones who are organizing what they're going to be doing. But what we do is play games, do arts and crafts, teach them yoga, do a workshop on nutrition and sanitation. So those kind of things don't really require any special skills, and yet the kids, they feel so fun and they are thankful that somebody has, all these foreigners have come and they've taken the time to be with us and give us art supplies and show us about making puppets or doing something, a fun activity. And then we always involve the teachers in it too. So the teachers are also learning during that process, during the workshop, and they can continue and implement it in all the rest of the school year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something good to think about is make sure that when you're going into volunteer, I mean, just what I've heard and what I've researched, make sure you're not taking over someone's job. If you're going in and you're teaching for a day and there aren't any other teachers there, these children aren't getting, a structured experience from a teacher. That's probably not the best, the best way of volunteering your time. I mean, if you have teaching skills and you can go in and help teachers with lesson plans, if you can go in and work with them for a few days, even a few hours. If you have accounting skills and you can go in and help a business with a quick accounting workshop, that might be a better use of your time, and the impact is going to go much further.
I think it's about using common sense, isn't it?
I'll speak also just to what Sucheta was saying in terms of the skills. With Operation Groundswell is similar, where we don't necessarily look for specific skill sets, but again, it's how, we're reframing or shifting away from the volunteering and more for the educational aspect. And so with that, like Sucheta was saying, it's more of a learning experience, an educational program for our participants. And so, we get involved in areas where you don't necessarily need, construction skills or something like that because you're not doing that.
Excellent, thank you. I felt like that helped shed a lot of light on on picking and choosing some of the better volunteer practices out there and programs. I would like to kind of get into the topic of, what happens if you do find yourself in a situation where you felt like you did the research and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation that you're not comfortable with. What are some good ways of handling that?
That's a tough question. I personally haven't had that experience, but I have had people who have been on a trip and they're like, oh, I didn't know that we were going to be standing out in the sun for half a day and working on the farm, and it's really hot and I don't want to bend down and I don't want to do this. And at that point, there's nothing much you can do. I try to do as much education beforehand about what exactly they'll be doing day by day, going the itinerary, educating them about the projects, who they will be helping, and what kind of work to expect and what kind of conditions to expect. But sometimes people, they are in this vacation mode and they don't want to work and they're just there to have fun. And I've seen that too. So I'm talking about it from an organizer standpoint and a volunteer standpoint. And at that point, you just have to take them aside and have a conversation that this is part of the deal. This is what you have signed up to do. And, you have to fulfill your duty as being on a volunteer on this trip. But if there are any physical limitations and things like that, then we just have to work around it.
I think for most volunteering that you do that's sort of more like a week or a month or something, I mean, you should either have an on-the-ground sort of handler or contact, or on a lot of the bigger groups, I know GVI do this, you have a sort of Western contact if that makes you feel more comfortable. And I think they're your first port of call if you're sort of away for a month or 6 weeks or something. And really they should be the one making sure that you're okay and you're connected to who you need to be connected to. But also I think as well, you know, beforehand, it's really useful if you can get in touch with people who've already done the program, talking to people who've already experienced it, been on the ground, that they can raise any potential issues. And really, if a company doesn't want to connect you with its alumni, with people who've been through the program already, then that's a red flag. You know, they should want to connect you to people because they'll have amazing reviews and they can share some really insider knowledge. So I think that's something you can do before you go, to just kind of put yourself at ease and talk to people who've already done it.
I think that's a really great question. The way I'm interpreting it, Claire, is if you are, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're on the ground and you see that you're getting involved in a project that might have some ethical issues that you're uncomfortable with, like what would you do in that situation? That's a great question, and I've actually, it's the first time anyone's asked. So yeah, I think it's great. That's a really tough position to be in, because as a person who's traveling to an entirely new country, you know, you're dealing with, you know, possibly culture shock, right? Culture shock of being in an entirely new place, and so far away from your family and friends and everything that you know, and then having to come, you know, face to face with these ethical issues is really quite jarring. And I can imagine how difficult an experience that would be. Honestly, like my first go-to would be to talk to somebody from that organization, volunteer sending organization, and having a conversation with them about your discomfort. Obviously, that might be a scary thing to do, but yeah, I mean, that's my initial reaction to that. And, you know, reaching out even to family and friends, just to have that support system to talk it through, and how, like, you know, you might not solve this problem right now, but at least you have that support system who can talk to you and, you know, be your sounding board. And then when you do come home, I feel like it's really important to talk about that. There are plenty of organizations who are doing some things that are, you know, a little bit shady. And I think it's important that these conversations start to happen. And a lot of these organizations that are, you know, doing responsible and ethical volunteering have honestly come out of experiences like that. And, you know, like our founders at Operation Groundswell, they didn't have this experience personally, but when they were doing an assessment of the field, saw a lot of these really unethical volunteer projects and wanted to build something out of that. And so like talking about it, making sure that more people are aware about, you know, the unethical things that are going on with these volunteer projects is really, really important. And the fact that we're having this conversation now, I feel like is fairly recent as well. And so that's sort of where my mind takes me.
And I would love to recommend that either current volunteer travelers or people who are thinking about it or people who have been on an experience to visit a website called learningservice.info, which was founded by the team at Peppy Tours, who we work closely with for all of our educational travel stuff. Learning service is a flip on words of service learning, which is I think quite an American phrase for like volunteerism activities. And they have a series of educational videos for people who are thinking about going, who are currently in volunteer placement, and people who have left, and how to have the greatest impact. So there is a specific video for people who are currently volunteering and how to make sure that that's the most meaningful and brings most positive benefits to those around you and yourself while you're on placement. So that's a really fantastic resource. And as I'm in Cambodia, the most common fishy situation is related again to child protection issues. And so those kinds of things are really important to report. And as Justine rightly said, it's important to have these conversations. I know that a lot of people who travel across the world to go and volunteer and then find out that it's not everything they signed up for are often embarrassed to admit that. And maybe they learn that they're not really helping anybody. And that can be a humbling and often heartbreaking moment for people, especially if they find themselves in a dodgy organization. But it's really important that those around you understand the realities and complexities of trying to do development work while you're overseas.
Yeah, I mean, I think of one particular, we were on a panel together just a couple of months ago. Her name's Pippa Biddle. She wrote this great article in the Huffington Post called The Problem with Little White Girls, Boys, and Volunteerism. And it's all about her experience in Haiti, I believe it was Haiti, where she was confronted with something unethical with her volunteer service provider. And that that is embarrassing, and it is a uncomfortable thing to come face to face with. But she talked about it, and now she is talking to a lot of other people about it and has speaking engagements about this very issue. And so using that experience as a platform and as a jumping point to do better and making sure that other people are aware is really important. So that's an important piece as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. We do have about 3 minutes left, and so I would like to open it up and see if you have any last tips or anything else to share about volunteer travel with our viewers.
One thing I think that has resonated with everybody, it has come up a lot, is about the impact. People always feel that if I'm going on a volunteer trip, then it's going to be impactful. I'm going to go help someone and I'm going to change their life. And I tell people it's probably going to change you more than it's going to change them. But still, I have also seen people who are impacted by this on the other side, the women that we work with in India, or the farms we work in Cuba, or the children in Bali. Because I go and visit them before and after when the volunteers come. And the impact they have is not that you're going to teach them English in a week and you're not going to teach them life skills in a week, but the fact that you took the time to travel all the way across the world and not be hanging out at the beach, but spending time with them at their shelter or the school or wherever they are, and showing that you care. That is the most important thing for them. So I tell all my volunteers is you're not going to have a big impact from a skill standpoint, but if you just show your heart and show love to these people, that's what they're going to remember the most.
I think that's really lovely. Oh, go on.
You can go ahead.
I was just going to say, from the other side of that, I think in terms of making sure you get the most out of everything, it's really trying to be honest with yourself as well before you set off. Whether you're looking for something that's a one-off experience, whether you're looking for a volunteer project that's actually going to help you later in a career, or test out something that you want is a field you think you might want to do. I think it's worth figuring that out before you start applying to places, because then it helps narrow down the choice, and it narrows down, the possibility that you're not happy with the placement or that it doesn't meet your expectations. I think sort of setting out what you want from it is almost as important as choosing where to go or how long for.
Can I? 1 minute. So
I was just going to add that if you're thinking about volunteering overseas, really try to understand what your motivations are and what you actually want. And a lot of the time it's good intentions and you want to bring some benefits to the destination you're visiting. And I just want people to remember that there is no shame in having a holiday. You can spend your money wisely and bring loads of benefits to local people. Support community-based tourism, stay in a homestay, support social enterprises, shop fair trade, all of these kinds of things about just generally visiting a country in a more respectful and responsible way is also really fantastic. And you don't have to volunteer to bring benefits to the destination.
One last one. I'm gonna jump in. And beyond that, when you do choose to go abroad to volunteer, and looking at the volunteer organization, when you're choosing that, also see if they are connecting you after your experience volunteering on the ground. Are there outlets for you to continue to stay engaged? And thinking of ways, even if they don't, for you as an individual, knowing that volunteering abroad, it doesn't end the minute that you hop back on that plane back to wherever home is. A lot of the issues that you're going to be interacting with on the ground around the world are issues that very much affect your home community wherever you are. And so it's all about applying the lessons that you're learning abroad to your home community and making sure that you are continuing to stay active in your local community, and standing in solidarity with the partners and the nonprofits that you met with on the ground on your volunteer travel journey.
Excellent. Wonderful. Obviously, we could keep talking about this all day. I would love to continue this conversation, but unfortunately, we do have to leave it here. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here and sharing your knowledge, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens next. And our next session today is with Orit Strauss from Giving Way, and she is going to continue the conversation with volunteer travel and some of the best ways to do that and some good platforms to use.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye. Enjoy the rest of the festival. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.